The human soldier chose the least popular alien princess, and shocked. The air was thick but breathable, filled with the scent of metallic blossoms that grew in neat, glowing clusters along the city streets. For a human, XTRA was both beautiful and strange. Towering buildings, shaped like spiraling crystals, reached into the pink-hued sky, their surfaces reflecting the faint glow of the twin suns. Aliens of every shape and size moved around him, speaking in languages that sounded musical and sharp at the same time. Elias took a deep breath and reminded himself why he was here. XTRA was hosting a diplomatic mission, one of the largest the galaxy had ever seen. Representatives from dozens of planets and civilizations were present, each hoping to form alliances, trade agreements, or simply gain prestige. And at the heart of it all were the royal families, the princesses of XTRA, each renowned for their beauty, intellect, or charisma. He adjusted the strap of his tactical pack, feeling the comforting weight of his standard-issue sidearm. Though this was a diplomatic mission, not a battlefield, Elias knew better than to let his guard down. Humans had a reputation in the galaxy. Some saw them as brave, others as reckless, and a few as stubborn beyond reason. He liked that reputation. It reminded him that sometimes being underestimated could be an advantage. The shuttle doors hissed closed behind him, and a XTRAN attendant approached, bowing slightly. "Welcome, Captain Elias Kane," the alien said in perfect galactic standard, its voice like soft chimes. "I am Soren. I will guide you to the royal court." Elias nodded. "Lead the way." As they walked, Elias observed the crowd around him. Most eyes were drawn to the extravagant, confident princesses who had already begun their public appearances. Bright gowns shimmered with lights, and their laughter echoed like music across the plaza. Delegates whispered and pointed, clearly calculating who might be the best ally or the most advantageous match. Yet amid the glittering attention, one figure moved quietly, almost in shadow, inspecting the surroundings with thoughtful eyes. That was Princess Lyra. Lyra did not wear glittering attire, nor did she have a radiant smile that demanded attention. Her dress was simple, colored in shades of green and silver, blending with the natural environment rather than standing out. Her hair, darker than the usual royal golden shades, framed her face in soft waves, and her eyes reflected a curiosity Elias had rarely seen in alien royalty. Unlike the others, she did not try to charm the crowd. She observed it. She watched the interactions, noted the reactions, and seemed almost careful. Elias was intrigued. Humans were drawn to courage and intelligence, and he had learned that appearances often lied. In his experience, the quiet ones, the overlooked ones, often had the most to offer. Soren led him through a series of glass corridors that reflected the glow of the city outside. "The ceremonial court awaits," Soren explained. "It is customary for representatives to observe the princesses before making their alignment. The decision carries weight. It is both symbolic and practical." Elias listened, nodding. "Understood." As they entered the grand hall, he felt the weight of expectation pressing down. The hall was enormous, shaped like a half-sphere with a high ceiling adorned with hanging crystal chandeliers that refracted light into millions of colors. Princesses were arranged on elevated platforms, each with her attendants. Crowds of aliens moved below, observing, whispering, and recording every moment. Elias knew that everyone in the hall was expecting him to follow the tradition, to choose a popular princess who dazzled with charm and spectacle. He found a vantage point near the center, quietly observing. The other princesses smiled, waved, and flirted with the cameras and diplomats. Their popularity was obvious. Applause followed their every move. Yet Lyra remained calm, studying Elias with quiet curiosity, not expecting him to be impressed. Elias could not explain why, but he felt drawn to her. There was a calm intelligence in her eyes, a sharpness that no glittering dress could hide. She moved with purpose, not for admiration, but because she seemed to care about the world around her. That was rare among royalty in the galaxy. Many learned the art of diplomacy, but few truly understood it. He spent the next few hours walking the corridors, attending briefings, and watching the princesses from a distance. Delegates approached him, offering opinions and advice. "Choose Princess Sorella," one said, her voice smooth and convincing. "She is popular and her influence is widespread. The crowd will respect your choice." Another delegate leaned closer. "Princess Aurinia is clever and powerful. Her alliances will secure your position." Do not waste time on Lyra. She has little support and is unlikely to make a difference. Elias listened, nodding politely, but his mind kept returning to Lyra. The whispers of popularity, the charts and calculations, none of them mattered to him as much as what he saw. Intelligence, courage, empathy, these were qualities that could not be measured by applause or titles. As the sun shifted, casting long shadows across the hall, the princesses were brought forward one by one for individual introductions. The crowd cheered loudly for the favorites, cameras flashing, but Lyra stepped forward with quiet grace. She did not speak first. She watched Elias with a steady gaze, waiting for him to acknowledge her presence. When he finally approached, he saw what made her different. She did not try to impress him with grand words or dazzling charm. Instead, she asked a simple question. "Captain Kane, what do you value most in an ally?" Elias paused, surprised by the straightforwardness of the question. Most would have tried to flatter him, to gauge his weaknesses, or to impress him with trivial accomplishments. Lyra wanted honesty. "I value courage, loyalty, and understanding," he replied, "and I think an ally should be willing to act, not just talk." Lyra nodded, her eyes reflecting relief and interest. "Then we are similar," she said quietly. "I believe that a leader must act with both thought and heart. Too many focus only on appearance, power, or popularity." Elias felt a small spark of respect. Here was someone who saw the same truths he did. Someone who understood that being seen as popular or glamorous was not the same as being strong or capable. The introduction ended, and Lyra stepped back, leaving the stage of attention. The crowd murmured, confused by her calm demeanor and lack of fanfare. For most, she was invisible, unworthy of notice. But Elias had noticed. He spent the rest of the evening observing her from a distance, noting how she interacted with her advisors and attendants. She listened carefully, considered the best courses of action, and did not seek praise. Unlike the others, she was genuine, thoughtful, and strategic. Elias realized that in a room full of flashy displays, she was the one most likely to make a real difference when action was needed. That night, as the twin suns set and the crystal towers glowed with a soft internal light, Elias reflected on what he had seen. Diplomacy, politics, and appearances were important, yes. But in his experience, the unexpected, the quiet, and the overlooked often had the greatest potential. And for the first time in his career, he felt a genuine curiosity, a desire to know more about someone whose presence had shocked him, not because of fame or popularity, but because of something far rarer: substance. Captain Elias Kane knew one thing for certain. The mission ahead would be far more complicated than he expected. But he also felt that the most valuable ally in that mission was not the one everyone expected him to choose. It was the least noticed, the quiet one, the one who observed more than she performed. And that was Princess Lyra. The morning sun rose over the crystal towers of Xithera, casting long beams of light that turned the city into a kaleidoscope of colors. Captain Elias Kane stood on the balcony of his temporary quarters, watching the preparations for the ceremonial contest. The event was the highlight of Xitheran diplomacy, a moment when every human, alien, and observer waited to see which princess the human representative would choose as an ally. For most, the contest was a spectacle of glamour and strategy. The most popular princesses had rehearsed speeches, dazzling attire, and carefully planned gestures to attract favor. Cameras floated around them, capturing every smile, every flick of a hand, every bow to the audience. Delegates whispered predictions, calculating which choice would bring the greatest advantage. Elias adjusted his uniform, feeling the weight of expectation on his shoulders. He had witnessed enough galactic diplomacy to know how appearances could deceive. A showy display might impress the crowd, but real strength, loyalty, and intelligence could not be faked. His thoughts returned to Princess Lyra. She had been quiet, observing rather than performing, yet her presence lingered in his mind. She had asked him a question the previous day, what he valued in an ally, and her answer had been clear, honest, and thoughtful. She cared about action, strategy, and understanding, in a room full of superficial charm that stood out. "Captain Kane," a soft voice said behind him. Elias turned to see Soren, his Xitheran guide, bowing slightly. "The contest will begin soon. I advise you to be ready. Delegates are curious. The princesses are curious. All eyes are upon you." Elias nodded. "I'm ready. Let them watch." The hall was enormous, filled with thousands of aliens from across the galaxy. The ceiling shimmered with light, reflecting the rising sun, while platforms had been arranged for each princess. Delegates crowded below, whispering and exchanging glances. The air buzzed with anticipation. One by one, the princesses stepped forward to present themselves. Princess Sorella, with her radiant smile and sparkling gown, moved confidently. Cameras captured her every gesture while the crowd cheered. She spoke eloquently about trade, power, and influence, her voice flowing like music. Every move was calculated to impress. Next was Princess Aurinia, clever and strategic, wearing a gown that changed color with her emotions. She made sharp, witty remarks, and the crowd laughed at her carefully timed humor. Applause followed her exit, and the favorites looked pleased with themselves. Then it was Lyra's turn. She stepped forward quietly, her simple attire reflecting the soft light. The crowd was confused. Some whispered, wondering why she didn't wear something grand or perform a dramatic entrance. Cameras shifted uncertainly, yet her eyes remained calm, focused on Elia's. When she reached the center, she did not begin with a speech. Instead, she observed the hall, noting the reactions of delegates and their own princesses. Then she looked directly at Elias and spoke. "Captain Kane," she said, her voice steady and clear, "the choices you make today will affect not only alliances but lives. How will you decide who to trust?" Elias felt a surge of admiration. Most would have attempted to charm him, to manipulate him with words. Lyra asked a question instead. It required thought, understanding, and honesty. He realized that this quiet princess, overlooked by many, was already demonstrating qualities that the others only pretended to possess. "I decide based on trust, courage, and intelligence," Elias said. "Not on popularity, not on appearances." Lyra nodded slightly, as if pleased by his answer. She stepped back, giving him space. The crowd murmured in confusion. Some whispered that Elias had made a mistake, that he would choose one of the celebrated princesses. They didn't understand that he saw beyond appearances. The contest continued with demonstrations of skill and knowledge. Princess Sorella showed her ability to negotiate trade disputes. Princess Aurinia displayed tactical simulations that impressed military observers. Each princess performed brilliantly, yet Elias noticed that their focus was always on being admired, not on the practical outcomes of their actions. Then he observed Lyra. She quietly solved a complex puzzle that involved resource management and disaster prevention for a nearby colony. She did not perform for applause. She acted to demonstrate competence. Her approach was thoughtful, efficient, and clearly effective. Elias saw what many others had missed. Her mind was sharp, her decisions carefully considered, and her priority was helping others rather than gaining attention. As the contest progressed, Elias noticed something troubling. A few delegates were trying to sway him through subtle threats or bribes, offers of wealth, political favors, and even influence over entire systems. The other princesses smiled and nodded, knowing the rules allowed such persuasion. But Lyra did not engage. She ignored attempts to manipulate her, remaining calm and focused. Elias felt respect growing stronger. "She is exactly the kind of ally I would want," he thought. He realized that this quiet, least popular princess had more substance than all the favorites combined. She did not rely on charm or spectacle. She relied on intelligence, courage, and ethical thinking, qualities humans prized highly. During a break in the contest, delegates gathered to discuss strategy and gossip. Elias found himself surrounded by chatter about who he might choose. "You cannot choose Lyra," one ambassador said sharply. "She has no influence, she has no following, aligning with her is political suicide." Elias shrugged. "I do not choose popularity or power, I choose character and ability." The ambassador frowned but said nothing further. Others whispered nervously, realizing Elias was not like the human representatives they had expected. They had counted on him following social norms, swayed by prestige and appearances. Instead, he was charting his own path. After the break, the contest resumed with a challenge designed to test the alliance potential of each princess. A simulation of an interstellar crisis had been set up. Delegates would judge how a princess and her potential human ally responded to emergencies, resource shortages, alien threats, and moral dilemmas. Princess Sorella approached first, guiding Elias through the simulation with confidence. She gave orders, but most seemed directed at impressing observers. The solution worked, but it lacked subtlety, and it relied heavily on flashy displays rather than strategy. The crowd applauded, but Elias noted the weaknesses. She might shine under observation, but in real danger she could falter. Princess Orinia followed, demonstrating clever tactics and rapid decision-making. Her approach was smart and effective, yet it was rigid. She had planned for the expected, but she seemed unprepared for unforeseen changes. Her focus remained on demonstrating intelligence rather than solving problems. Finally, Lyra stepped forward. She spoke calmly, asking Elias for input rather than directing him. Together, they analyzed the simulation, discussing each option. Lyra listened carefully, adapted her strategy as the situation changed, and acted decisively when needed. Her approach combined thought, courage, and moral consideration. The simulated crisis was resolved efficiently, with minimal risk and maximum benefit, a result that outshone all others, though the crowd's reaction was quiet. Elias realized then that his decision was already made. Popularity and spectacle had their place, but real leadership, the kind that mattered in crises, required intelligence, courage, and collaboration. Lyra had shown all of these traits naturally, without trying to impress anyone. After the simulation, the final part of the contest required the human representative to publicly align with one princess. Delegates leaned forward, cameras focused on Elias, and whispers filled the hall. Many expected him to choose the favored princesses, Sorella or Orinia. Choosing Lyra, the least popular and quietest, would shock everyone. Elias walked slowly toward Lyra, who remained calm, waiting. The crowd's chatter died down as eyes turned to him. Aliens held their breath. Some advisors looked horrified. When he reached Lyra, he extended his hand. "Princess Lyra, I choose you," he said, his voice steady and clear. A stunned silence filled the hall. Delegates exchanged shocked glances. Cameras zoomed in, capturing the moment. The favorite's smiles faltered, and whispers of disbelief spread like wildfire. Yet Lyra's expression remained calm, her eyes meeting Elias with quiet approval. She nodded once, acknowledging the choice without ceremony. The crowd began to murmur, some in outrage, some in confusion, and a few in admiration. Elias felt a sense of satisfaction. He had not chosen the popular, flashy option. He had chosen substance, courage, and intelligence, the traits that truly mattered in the galaxy. Lyra's advisors whispered among themselves, a mixture of surprise and cautious approval in their voices. The princess herself stepped forward not for attention, but to prepare for what came next, the real challenges of diplomacy, crisis management, and perhaps even danger. Elias looked at her and thought, "This is the ally I want. Not for show, not for politics, but because she will stand when it matters most." And for the first time, the human soldier and the quiet, least popular alien princess shared a mutual understanding. Appearances could be deceiving, popularity was temporary, but courage, intelligence, and loyalty would endure. The contest was over, but the real story, the one that would test their abilities, their trust, and their courage, was just beginning. The city of XTRA glimmered under the light of its twin suns, but beneath the sparkling towers and elegant streets, a quiet danger was beginning to stir. Captain Elias Kane and Princess Lyra had spent the morning reviewing the results of the ceremonial contest. Delegates whispered, cameras recorded, and advisors debated, but Elias' attention was focused on something else, a series of subtle signs he had noticed during the contest. It was easy to see the beauty, intelligence, and charm of the princesses. It was harder to notice the small things, the nervous glances of certain delegates, the whispered instructions to attendants, the strange patterns in the simulations they had just completed. Elias had spent years reading battlefield patterns, spotting threats, and predicting moves. Something in the air told him that the contest's end was not the end of their trials. Lyra moved beside him as he studied the reports. Her calm voice broke the quiet. "What troubles you, Captain Kane?" Elias glanced at her. "I've seen subtle signs of a plan to destabilize the alliances here. I'm not certain yet, but something isn't right." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "Destabilize? You mean a threat to XTRA or to the princesses?" "Both," Elias replied. "There's a faction working behind the scenes. They could try to use the contest results to create confusion, maybe even harm someone." Lyra nodded slowly, her mind already analyzing the possibilities. "I've noticed some irregularities myself," she admitted. "Certain delegates have been asking unusual questions, probing weaknesses in ways unrelated to the contest. I thought it was curiosity, but perhaps it is more." Elias felt a surge of respect for her. Many would have ignored these signs, distracted by public appearances or popularity. Lyra noticed and considered carefully. He realized once again that the least popular princess was often the most capable. They moved through the streets of Xithera, blending with crowds of visitors, merchants, and curious citizens. Even here, Elia's senses remained alert. He observed patterns of movement, listened to snippets of conversation, and noted those who seemed out of place. Lyra spoke quietly. "We cannot let anyone suspect we are aware. If we act too soon, the faction may retreat or become more dangerous." Elias nodded. "Agreed. We need to gather information, understand their plan, and be ready to act. Discretion is key." For the rest of the day, they worked together, analyzing communications, reviewing records, and interviewing attendants under the guise of routine diplomacy. It was careful work, slow and deliberate. Delegates continued their displays of charm and skill, oblivious to the unfolding danger. By evening, Elias and Lyra had pieced together a troubling pattern. Certain influential delegates had been subtly coordinating, attempting to manipulate public perception and political alliances. Their goal was unclear, but the potential for chaos was high. Elias leaned back in his chair, rubbing his forehead. If they act during the upcoming summit, the results could be disastrous, not just politically but physically. Someone could get hurt. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Then we must be ready. We need a plan that protects everyone, especially those at risk, without revealing that we know." Over the next few hours, they devised a strategy. Lyra would monitor communication channels and advise Elias on who to observe closely. Elias would use his military experience to anticipate moves, guard vulnerable points, and act decisively if needed. Their combined skills, her intelligence, his tactical sense, formed a unique and powerful partnership. Late at night, as Xithera's twin moons cast pale light over the city, Elias and Lyra walked through the palace gardens. The glowing flora illuminated their path, creating shifting shadows that mirrored the uncertainty of their mission. "You know," Elias said softly, "most would have dismissed you during the contest. They would never have imagined you were capable of handling a real threat." Lyra smiled faintly. "And yet here I am, standing with a human who sees what others cannot. It seems we both understand the value of perception." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alert from the palace's security network. A small group of unidentified individuals had been detected moving through restricted corridors. Their path suggested they were targeting the princesses. Elias and Lyra exchanged a glance. "That's our cue," he said. They moved quickly but quietly, using hidden corridors known only to palace personnel. Lyra guided him with calm precision, avoiding cameras and patrols. The intruders were careful, but Elias' trained eyes noticed inconsistencies. Irregular footsteps, delayed signals, and minor distractions intentionally left in their path. As they neared the intruder's location, Elias whispered, "There's more than just a simple attack." "They're testing security, mapping responses, and probing weaknesses." Lyra nodded. "We can use that against them. If we act wisely, they will never expect it." They waited in shadows, observing the intruders. The group consisted of a mix of species, all trained in stealth and combat. Their leader, a tall figure cloaked in dark fabric, was clearly coordinating the operation. Elias whispered a plan. "We'll split. I'll create a diversion, draw their attention, and you move to secure the target." Lyra's eyes glinted with determination. "Agreed. Timing is everything." Elias moved first, stepping into the open with careful confidence. He triggered a small, controlled alert, drawing the intruder's attention. They paused, scanning for the source. Meanwhile, Lyra moved silently, using shadows and her knowledge of the palace layout. She reached the area where the princesses were being kept and began securing them, guiding attendants to safe locations. Her calmness under pressure amazed Elias, even from a distance. The intruders reacted faster than expected, splitting into smaller groups. Elias engaged in controlled maneuvers, using his strength and training to block corridors and confuse their movements. He avoided direct confrontation, focusing instead on strategy and positioning. Lyra continued her work, her quick thinking preventing potential harm. She identified weaknesses in the intruders' approach, using their own methods against them. Small devices she had prepared earlier, alarms, signal jammers, and concealed locks, slowed the intruders and bought time. Together, they moved like a single entity. Elias' action created openings that Lyra exploited. Lyra's intelligence and foresight prevented mistakes that could have cost lives. The intruders, confident and trained, were unprepared for such coordinated efficiency from a human and a quiet, overlooked princess. After tense minutes that felt like hours, the intruders began retreating, realizing that the situation was no longer in their favor. Elias and Lyra allowed them to escape, knowing that chasing them could lead to greater risk. They had protected the immediate threat and gained critical insight into the faction behind the attack. As the city returned to its calm state, Lyra and Elias regrouped in a secure chamber. Both were breathing heavily, adrenaline still high, but their expressions reflected relief and mutual respect. "You did well," Elias said. "Your planning saved lives tonight." Lyra shook her head slightly. "We did well together. Neither of us could have succeeded alone." Elias smiled, recognizing the truth in her words. Humans often valued teamwork, courage, and adaptability, traits that had allowed them to overcome challenges across the galaxy. Lyra had proven that she possessed all of these qualities, quietly but effectively. The next day, whispers of the attempted attack spread, though details were scarce. Delegates speculated, some in fear, some in curiosity. The princesses, now aware of the danger, were cautious and vigilant, yet few knew the true heroes behind the response. Elias and Lyra continued their collaboration, reviewing security measures, analyzing communications, and preparing for the summit that would decide the future of alliances on Xithera. Their partnership, once unexpected and quietly formed, was now essential. As night fell again, Elias looked out over the city, the crystal towers glowing softly in the moonlight. "This is only the beginning," he said to Lyra. She stood beside him, calm and steady. "I know, but we are ready. Together we can face whatever comes next." Elias nodded, feeling a sense of confidence he rarely allowed himself. Humanity's adaptability, courage, and ingenuity had brought him this far, and now, combined with Lyra's intelligence and calm strength, they were a force few would expect, and even fewer could oppose. The city was beautiful, the lights serene, but Elias knew the danger was not over. The faction that had tested them would not stop. The true challenge was approaching, and it would demand every ounce of skill, courage, and trust between human and princess. And for the first time, Elias felt that he had found a companion who understood the true meaning of strength, not the kind measured by popularity or spectacle, but the kind measured by intelligence, courage, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. The day of the summit arrived with a sky so bright, it seemed to illuminate every detail of Xithera's grand city. Delegates from across the galaxy filled the ceremonial hall, each representing their planet's interests, ambitions, and hidden agendas. The stakes were higher than ever. Alliances would be confirmed, agreements signed, and power structures tested. Captain Elias Kane stood near the entrance, scanning the crowd with trained eyes. He could feel the tension in the air, the same tension that came before any great battle. Only this battle was political, psychological, and potentially dangerous in ways few could predict. His hand rested lightly on his sidearm, not because he expected immediate violence, but because preparedness had always been his advantage. Beside him, Princess Lyra adjusted the simple green and silver sash she wore over her gown. Unlike the other princesses, she made no attempt to attract attention with flamboyance or performance. Instead, her calm demeanor and thoughtful eyes radiated a quiet authority. Elias had learned in the past days that her strength was not in appearance, but in judgment, strategy, and courage. "The summit begins in 5 minutes," Soren whispered, bowing slightly. "All delegates are assembled. Protocol demands public alignment, but the hidden dangers remain." Elias nodded. "We're ready." The summit opened with ceremonial speeches, applause, and recorded declarations of peace and mutual cooperation. Delegates smiled, bowed, and exchanged formal pleasantries. For the most part, it appeared to be a normal diplomatic meeting, yet Elias and Lyra could sense the subtle currents of tension beneath the surface. As the speeches concluded, the human representative was expected to publicly support his chosen princess, demonstrating the alliance. Elias had chosen Lyra, the least popular and most overlooked, shocking many at the ceremonial contest. Now all eyes would be on him and her, evaluating every word, gesture, and decision. Lyra stood with calm precision, her posture relaxed but confident. Elias approached her slowly, aware that the crowd would scrutinize every movement. Cameras floated above, capturing the moment for every corner of the galaxy. Whispers ran through the hall, delegates shocked, favorites murmuring disbelief, and observers questioning the wisdom of his choice. "Princess Lyra," Elias said, his voice carrying clearly throughout the hall, "I stand with you. Not for popularity, not for spectacle, but for courage, intelligence, and integrity. Together, we will face the challenges ahead." A stunned silence followed, broken only by a few gasps of disbelief. The favorites' smiles faltered. Delegates whispered urgently, some scandalized, some impressed. Lyra nodded once, accepting his words with quiet dignity. Her calmness contrasted sharply with the uproar around them. Before the applause could fully settle, an unexpected event shook the hall. A sudden commotion erupted near the entrance. A group of masked individuals, the same faction Elias had suspected days earlier, attempted to infiltrate the summit. They carried devices that could disrupt communications and create chaos among the delegates. Their plan was clear: destabilize the summit, cause panic, and undermine trust. Elias' instincts kicked in immediately. "Lyra, stay close, this is our moment," he whispered. He moved swiftly, positioning himself between the intruders and the assembly. Using both his size and training, he blocked their path, forcing them to reconsider their approach. A few of the intruders tried to rush past, but Elias anticipated their movements, redirecting them with precise, controlled maneuvers. Lyra's mind worked as fast as his reflexes. She coordinated with palace security, quietly sending signals to secure exits, lock critical areas, and redirect delegates to safety. Her calm voice over the communication channel kept order in the chaos, preventing panic from spreading. The intruders split into smaller groups, attempting to flank the hall. Elias adjusted, moving decisively to intercept them. His human strength, agility, and tactical awareness surprised even the trained attackers. They had counted on chaos and distraction, not the precise, strategic defense of a single human soldier. One intruder aimed a device at a group of delegates, intending to disable their communication and create confusion. Elias lunged, disarming the device and neutralizing the threat without harm. Every move he made was calculated, minimizing risk to others while preventing the attackers from advancing. Lyra identified another group attempting to breach the princess's area. She directed palace staff to guide them to secure chambers and activated hidden safety measures she had prepared earlier. Doors slid shut, barriers rose silently, and the intruders found themselves isolated. Lyra's intelligence and foresight allowed her to manage the situation without drawing attention to the danger that could have terrified the crowd. Elias intercepted the leader of the intruders, a tall figure wielding advanced technology. The confrontation was tense, a test of strength, strategy, and timing. The leader attempted to subvert Elias' movements, but the human soldier anticipated each action, using momentum and precision to force the intruder back. Within moments, the threat was neutralized, the leader restrained, and the immediate danger eliminated. The crowd, initially unaware of the severity of the situation, began to murmur in astonishment. Cameras captured Elias' decisive actions, documenting a human soldier defending delegates and a princess with courage, intelligence, and calm composure. Observers across the galaxy would later replay the event, analyzing every detail of their teamwork. Once the intruders were contained, Elias turned to Lyra. "Are you unharmed?" he asked. "I am," she replied calmly. "The delegates are safe, that is what matters." Elias allowed himself a small nod of respect. Lyra had handled her responsibilities with precision, foresight, and courage. The least popular princess, overlooked by many, had proven herself indispensable. The summit resumed, though tension lingered. Delegates now viewed Elias and Lyra with new respect. Popularity and charm no longer mattered. Action, intelligence, and courage had defined the moment. The crowd's perception shifted, slowly but noticeably. Whispers of admiration replaced doubts, and some delegates began reconsidering their previous judgments. As the day continued, alliances were confirmed, trade agreements signed, and political strategies adjusted. Elias and Lyra worked seamlessly, coordinating decisions and anticipating potential risks. Their partnership, forged under pressure, was stronger than any prior expectations. During a brief recess, Lyra spoke quietly to Elias. "You surprised everyone today, Captain Kane, not just the delegates, but even me. You acted decisively, without hesitation." Elias smiled faintly. And you, Princess, guided the entire summit without drawing attention to your actions. Most would have overlooked your role, but I saw it. I see strength where others see quietness. She nodded. Perhaps that is why we work well together. We see beyond appearances. As evening approached, the city outside the hall glowed with the soft light of the twin moons. Elias and Lyra stood near a balcony, observing the peaceful streets below. Though the summit had concluded without further incident, Elias knew the danger had not disappeared entirely. The faction that had attempted the attack would regroup, study their failures, and plan again. "We've won this battle," Elias said, "but the war may not be over." Lyra's eyes reflected calm determination. "Then we will be ready. Together we can face anything." Elias realized that humanity's unique strengths, adaptability, courage, and resilience, combined with Lyra's intelligence, calmness, and foresight, formed a partnership few could match. Popularity and spectacle might impress observers, but substance, courage, and intelligence determined outcomes. The events of the day marked a turning point, not only in the summit, but in how delegates and observers would view the human soldier and the quiet princess. Their actions had proven that courage and intelligence could triumph over chaos, that unexpected allies could shift outcomes, and that true leadership was measured by deeds, not popularity. As they prepared to leave the ceremonial hall, Elias and Lyra shared a silent understanding. The challenges ahead would be greater, more complex, and perhaps even more dangerous. But they were ready. Together, they had faced chaos and danger, and they had emerged stronger. In the quiet moments before leaving the hall, Elias reflected on the journey so far. Humans had long been underestimated in the galaxy, dismissed as reckless or ordinary. Yet in moments of crisis, their courage, adaptability, and ability to act decisively shone through. Lyra had witnessed this firsthand, and together they had created a bond built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. The turning point of the summit had demonstrated one clear truth: the least expected, the least popular, often held the greatest strength. And the human soldier, choosing substance over spectacle, had proven that true leadership and heroism were not measured by appearances. They were measured by action, courage, and wisdom. As they exited the hall, the crowd of delegates watched in a mix of awe, curiosity, and newfound respect. The human soldier and the quiet princess had not only survived a dangerous attempt on the summit, but they had also shifted the perception of power, courage, and intelligence throughout the galaxy. Elias glanced at Lyra. "The galaxy won't forget this," he said. Lyra smiled faintly. "No, it won't, but our work is not done. Danger never rests, and neither can we." And with that, the human soldier and the least popular alien princess, once underestimated and overlooked, stepped forward into a future filled with challenges, alliances, and adventures yet to come. The summit had been a test, and they had passed it, not for recognition, but because they acted when it mattered most. The twin suns of Xithra rose slowly over the horizon, painting the city in golden and pink hues. After the summit and the near disaster that Elias Kane and Princess Lyra had faced together, the city was quiet, almost reflective. For most delegates and citizens, it seemed like a normal day. But for Elias and Lyra, it was the beginning of a new era, one that would test alliances, trust, and their understanding of leadership. The palace halls were buzzing with discussion. Delegates whispered not only about the summit's success, but about the human soldier who had acted decisively to protect everyone. Elias, once considered an outsider, had proven that humanity's strength lay in courage, intelligence, and adaptability. And Lyra, the quiet, least popular princess, had shown that intelligence, foresight, and calm judgment could achieve more than charm or spectacle. As they walked through the hallways together, Lyra spoke softly. "Captain Kane, the faction may try again. They will not forget what happened during the summit." Elias nodded, his mind alert. "We'll be ready. The difference now is that people have seen what we can do together. That changes their calculations." Their words were not just for themselves. Palace guards and aides overheard, and even those who had doubted Lyra's abilities began to reconsider their opinions. The quiet princess who had once been overlooked was now someone to be respected, and possibly feared, by those who plotted against peace. Later that morning, Lyra and Elias convened a meeting with key palace advisors and representatives from other allied planets. The discussion focused on security, communication, and maintaining alliances. Elias presented his observations and strategies, while Lyra provided careful analysis of the faction's likely next moves. One advisor spoke nervously. "Princess Lyra, your calm handling of the summit and Captain Kane's actions, it was unexpected. Many feared disaster, yet both of you acted with precision. It seems the least obvious choice was also the strongest." Lyra smiled faintly. "Perhaps the lesson is simple. Do not underestimate quiet minds or unconventional allies. Courage and intelligence often appear in unexpected places." Elias added, "Humans have long been underestimated, but we adapt, we act, and we can respond in ways that others may not predict. That combination can be powerful, especially when paired with an intelligent and thoughtful partner." The room fell silent for a moment, as delegates and advisors considered the implications. Some realized that the balance of power could shift based on perception, and that true influence came from action, not appearance. As the day progressed, a series of communications arrived from allied planets. Messages of congratulations and curiosity poured in. Leaders wanted to understand how a single human soldier and an overlooked princess had prevented a crisis. They asked to study the methods used, to learn how such efficiency and courage could be replicated elsewhere. Elias and Lyra worked tirelessly, responding to messages and meeting with delegations. They shared knowledge, strategies, and observations, careful not to reveal sensitive details that could compromise security. Their partnership had become an example of what collaboration across species could achieve when trust, intelligence, and courage were combined. By afternoon, the palace staff had organized a small ceremony to recognize their efforts. It was not a grand celebration like the summit, but it was sincere. Delegates, aides, and guards gathered not to witness spectacle but to honor action. Elias stood at the front, adjusting his uniform. He was not seeking praise. His satisfaction came from seeing order restored, threats neutralized, and people safe. Lyra approached him, her calm presence radiating quiet confidence. The chief advisor spoke first. "Today, we recognize not only the courage of a human soldier, Captain Elias Kane, but also the intelligence and foresight of Princess Lyra. Together, they have demonstrated that leadership is measured not by popularity or appearances, but by action, strategy, and care for others." Applause filled the room, modest but genuine. Delegates who had once doubted Lyra now looked at her with admiration. Those who had expected Elias to follow tradition understood that true leadership sometimes required unconventional choices. Lyra addressed the gathering with calm authority. "We do not act for recognition. We act because it is necessary. The galaxy faces challenges every day, and leadership is not a title. It is a responsibility. Courage, intelligence, and collaboration are what keep communities safe and alliances strong." Elias nodded in agreement. "Actions define us more than appearances. Trust, adaptability, and courage are what matter when it counts. That is a lesson for all of us, and one we hope will be remembered." The ceremony concluded with respectful acknowledgement, but the real recognition came later, in subtle ways. Delegates began consulting Lyra and Elias more frequently, asking for input on strategic decisions and seeking guidance for complex problems. Allies shared intelligence, knowing that their collaboration was now strengthened by proven competence and trust. Even the faction that had attempted to destabilize the summit remained in the background, cautious and wary. They had learned that human determination and Lyra's intelligence could counteract their plans. Attempting another attack would no longer be simple or guaranteed to succeed. Over the following days, Elias and Lyra continued their work. They traveled to nearby colonies, observed trade negotiations, and provided guidance for defensive planning. Their teamwork became a model for interstellar cooperation. Citizens and delegates began to share stories of the human soldier and the quiet princess who had changed the course of events, inspiring trust, courage, and hope across Zithra and beyond. One evening, as the twin moons rose again over the city, Elias and Lyra stood atop a balcony overlooking the glowing towers. The city below seemed peaceful, almost serene, yet both knew that vigilance was always necessary. "Do you think the galaxy will ever stop underestimating humans?" Lyra asked quietly, her eyes reflecting moonlight. Elias chuckled softly. "Not likely, but that's fine. It gives us an advantage. They will always be surprised when we act with courage, intelligence, and determination, And now, we've shown that we can combine those qualities with insight and strategy. That makes us even stronger together. Lyra smiled faintly. Then we will continue to act wisely. Leadership is not about recognition. It is about responsibility and about protecting others even when no one is watching. Elias nodded. Exactly, and sometimes the least expected choice turns out to be the most important. Their partnership, forged in the crucible of crisis, had proven that human courage and ingenuity could work seamlessly with intelligence, foresight, and calm judgment. Delegates, citizens, and allies were beginning to see that substance, not popularity, defined true strength. And the quiet, least popular princess, once overlooked and underestimated, had become a symbol of wisdom, courage, and unexpected power. Word of their achievements spread across XTRA and neighboring systems. Leaders and citizens shared tales of how a human soldier and an overlooked princess had prevented chaos, inspired collaboration, and strengthened alliances. Popularity and spectacle were still admired, but their actions demonstrated that real leadership depended on substance, courage, and careful judgment. Elias and Lyra continued to work together, not for fame or accolades, but because the galaxy demanded it. Each day presented new challenges, from negotiating trade disputes to responding to potential threats. Yet their experiences during the contest, the attempted attack, and the summit had prepared them for whatever lay ahead. As the days turned into weeks, alliances grew stronger, threats diminished, and the reputation of the human soldier and the quiet princess became firmly established. Their choices had reshaped perception and set a new standard for leadership in the galaxy. In private moments, Elias reflected on the journey. Humans were often underestimated, yet their courage, adaptability, and determination could achieve incredible results. Paired with intelligence, calm judgment, and insight, those qualities could overcome challenges that others might deem impossible. Lyra, too, reflected on the lessons learned. Popularity was fleeting, appearances were deceiving, and charm was not enough to protect or lead. True strength came from intelligence, courage, and the willingness to act decisively when it mattered most. Together, they had proven a timeless truth. The least popular, the least noticed, and the quietest could achieve more than the celebrated, the admired, or the ostentatious, if they possessed substance, courage, and the wisdom to act. And so, as the twin moons of XTRA glowed softly over the city, Captain Elias Kane and Princess Lyra stood side by side, ready for the challenges yet to come. Their legacy was not built on fame or recognition, but on action, trust, and courage. The galaxy had witnessed the power of unexpected alliances, and the story of the human soldier and the least popular alien princess would inspire generations to come. The journey had begun with a choice to value courage, intelligence, and substance over popularity and spectacle. That choice had changed the course of the summit, strengthened alliances, and reshaped perceptions across XTRA and beyond. And in the quiet moments, Elias and Lyra knew that together, they could face whatever the galaxy had yet to offer. The least expected choice had proven to be the strongest, and the human soldier and the quiet princess had become symbols of courage, wisdom, and hope in a galaxy full of challenges.